please keep a paper and pen with you and be comfortable. Take out 30 to 40 minutes for this lecture, right? Okay. So in this lecture, I am going to cover first of all the types of economic system in India, right? So in India we follow the mixed economy, and I will discuss why we took the mixed economy. Why didn't we took the capitalism or socialism as a pure system? What is the meaning of democratic socialism? That we'll also discuss, and how the democratic socialism is reflected in the Indian economy as of today. Then we also see the important features of the 5-year plans, and right. So all those things we will discuss in this lecture. So in this lecture we are going to discuss till the plan holiday, and the later plan we will discuss in the next lecture. Again, I am telling you, this lecture is not irrelevant. You might think that you have already read in the prelims examination, but let me tell you that this session is very, very important. So don't miss this chapter. Now, the type of economic system in India, right? The type of economic system in India. So for that, we have to understand that there were two important economic systems prevalent in the world at the time of independence, when India got the freedom, right? So one is the capitalism, another is the socialism, right? So this capitalism was prevalent in the USA, and this socialism was prevalent in the USSR. The capitalism model says the private property, the property belongs to the private sector, and the socialism system says the property belongs to the society. So social ownership of all the resources, right? Now both of these systems, they have their merits and demerits. In the capitalism system, the merit is that, the good thing is that it is efficient, because it rewards the productivity, right? So if a person is working hard, it will reward that. So that will actually increase the productivity of the economy, which is good for the overall resource utilization as well as improving the standard of living of the society. However, at the same time, the negative thing is that this can lead to inequality. This can lead to the inequality. Similarly, in case of the socialism model, the good thing is that it ensures the equity. All the resources are distributed among all the people. So the chances of poverty, the chances of inequality are very, very less. However, the negative thing is that it makes the people dependent upon the state, and the state may become authoritarian, right? So there can be inefficiency also. Why? Because when people know that they will be getting the minimum food, they will be getting the minimum resources, and even if they don't work, they are entitled to have the good resources, then they may not work. They cannot productively, they may not be motivated to work productively. So these are the plus and minus of the capitalist system as well as the socialist system, right? So now coming to the India, so before we discuss that which system we adopted in India, let me further discuss a little bit about the capitalism system as well as the socialism system. So there are two types of economic system. So India had the choice in the capitalist system and socialistic system, and this capitalistic system and socialistic system can answer these three questions. First is what to produce, second is how to produce, and third is whom to distribute. These three economic questions can be answered by the two economic systems in different way. Let us see how they answer. So in the capitalistic system, the first question, what to produce in terms of goods and services. The capitalistic system says that we will produce those goods which are in demand, for which the people can pay the price. So these things we will produce. For example, the society actually requires maybe water, maybe the education, but if it is not in demand, then private sector will not generate. The socialistic system says that it will produce whatever is needed, right? So the purpose of capitalistic system is the profit motive. So if there is demand, then it can have some price. If there is price, then it can generate the profit. However, in case of socialistic system, the purpose is to satisfy the needs of the society. The second question, how to produce? In case of capitalistic system, this is answered by if the labor is cheap, then the capitalistic system will follow labor. If the capital is cheap or the machine is cheap, then it will follow the capital. So it will not think about the employment opportunities perspective. It will not think about the skill perspective. It will only think about the one perspective, that is the cost. So minimum cost, whichever option is giving, it will adopt that option only. In case of socialistic society, the factors like employment generation, the factors like availability of capital, these things are considered, right? So it takes care of the needs of the society. Whom to distribute? The capitalistic system will distribute to the people who have the purchasing power, and the socialistic system will distribute to the people who actually need it, even if they don't have the purchasing power. For example, healthcare. Even if the person can't afford it, he can't pay it, but the socialistic system will provide it. The capitalist system will provide only the person is having the purchasing power. So, as we just discussed that the capitalism and the socialism type of economic system, they can answer the three questions differently, right? So what goods and services are to be produced? The capitalism system says that it can be decided by the goods in demand, and the socialism system says that it can be decided by the need of the society. How the goods should be produced? The capitalism system says that it depends upon the cost, and the socialism system says that it depends upon the need, that is the employment and the other resources in the country. Then regarding the distribution, the capitalism system says that the distribution should be done to the people who can afford it, the people who have the purchasing power. And in case of the socialism system, it says that the people who need the resources should get the amount, should get the goods and the distribution, right? So considering all these things, India adopted the mixed economy. Why? Because if we see the capitalism system was prevalent in the USA, but in the USA in 1932 there was a Great Depression. And this Great Depression spread all across the world. So this Great Depression actually reflected the weaknesses of the capitalism system, which assumed that with the capitalism system in place, its economy will work smoothly, but that didn't happen, right? And similarly, in case of socialism, there were also various limitations. In USSR, there was over authoritarianism, as well as there was inefficiencies in the economy. The PSUs were not working well. So both the capitalism system and the socialism system had their limitations. So at that time, the Jawaharlal Nehru, who was the architect of the Indian planning system, he very much liked the Soviet planning system. However, he also knew that we cannot give the entire property to the social ownership, as well as we have to take the benefit of the capitalism, which is providing the efficiency and the productivity in the economy. So we adopted a mix of the public and the private sector. Public and the private sector, right? And in this case, we gave the priority to the public sector, not to the private sector. Even though we adopted two sectors together, but still the priority was given more to the public sector. But why? Why we gave the priority to the public sector? Because at the time of independence, as we saw that during the Britishers' time, the Indian industry was not very strong. The Britishers made their own industry very strong. Britishers imported the raw material from India and exported the finished goods to India. So consequently, the India was deindustrialized. And as India was deindustrialized, definitely the industry went very weak. So because of that, the Indian private sector was very, very weak. And we could not give any important thing, any important sector of the economy in the hand of private sector. One reason was this, that private sector was not capable. Second reason, at the time of independence, our poverty rate was very high. Majority of our population was poor. The per capita income was very, very less. So if we would have given the role to the private sector, the dominant role to the private sector will distribute the goods, produce the goods according to the purchasing power of the people, not according to the need of the people. If people require the affordable housing, the private sector may not give it to them because the people cannot afford it. People need it, but people can't pay for it. So private sector will not provide the affordable housing. Similarly, the private sector will produce only those goods which are in demand, not those goods which are actually required. So the private sector will actually take care of the rich people, but it will ignore the poor people. Therefore, we took the private sector along with the public sector, but we gave the most important role to the public sector. The public sector was given the budgetary support. Right? The public sector was given the budgetary support. We gave huge amount to the railways, huge amount for the establishment of the big projects, the irrigation projects, the power plants, the chemical fertilizer plants, and so on. Also, the public sector was made social oriented. It was made social oriented, means it will take care of the interest of the people with the help of reduced pricing, with the help of providing the things throughout the India, not limited to the certain regions of India, which are the rich regions. So it will ensure the balanced regional development. It will ensure the balanced regional development. Also, when public sector will be developing its infrastructure, then automatically the infrastructure of the near surroundings will automatically improve. For example, if ONGC is establishing its factory at some place, at some remote place, then automatically the near about area, for example 10 to 15 kilometer area, will automatically develop. So this is the reason why we gave the important role to the public sector. So overall, we adopted the mixed economy where both the public sector and the private sector together will give answer to the three questions. And in this case, we gave market the role in such a way that they will provide whatever goods they can produce. Not that they can produce everything. They can't afford the big industries. They can't afford the big infrastructure. and the government will provide the essential goods and services. Essential goods and services, for example, education, for example, health, for example, roads, for example, power, for example, housing, and so on. Right? So this discussion is the foundation of the concept why the public sector has been given the more importance in the Indian scenario rather than the private sector at the time of independence, right? So from this place we can develop the debate of disinvestment, we can develop the debate of the public private partnership, we can develop the debate of the banking sector privatization, we can develop the debate of the PPP in the health sector, PPP in the micro irrigation, we can develop the debate of many other things. Now we are talking about giving prominent role to the private sector. Even we are saying that the people from the private sector, they can be joining in the Indian government at the joint secretaries because they are having the rich experience, right? So today the scenario is different, and we will discuss how this public versus private debate has been evolving from independence till now. So this debate we will discuss with certain examples, right? So this we will see in a different lecture, right? Now, so we are following the mixed economy. That is one thing. So mixed economy is a concept, right? In India, we are following the democratic socialism. So democratic socialism, right? So what is democratic socialism and why democratic socialism, right? So basically, as I told you, Jawaharlal Nehru was the architect of the Indian planning system. He was the architect of the Indian economy. He was the foremost planner, right? So he liked the concept of socialism and he borrowed the concept of planning from the Russians. At the same time, he also regarded the democratic values of the capitalist society, that is the USA, right? So Nehru thought that we will have a combination of socialism and democracy. So this combination of socialism and democracy is called democratic socialism. And what is the reason? The reason is that all the citizens will have equal opportunity to education, healthcare, and employment. And this equal opportunity is available because of the socialism. Because of the capitalism. And because more prominently, rather I should say because of the democracy. Right? So in a democracy, everyone gets equal right. And the problem with the capitalism is that the certain class, the capitalist class, is exploiting the worker class. So this exploitation can be avoided with the help of socialism. So a combination of democracy and socialism is what we call as democratic socialism, right? What we call as a democratic socialism. Now we will see what is the reflection of how this democratic socialism is reflected in Indian economy. How we can see this democratic socialism is in play. So first of all, we have a huge faith in the democratic values. Our constitution is based upon the democracy only. We have the faith in the mixed economy. This mixed economy is also a reflection of the democratic socialism. Then all the important decisions, economic decisions, whether this is the decision of whether to build the infrastructure, whether to invest in the railways, whether to provide education to a certain class of people, all those things are not decided based upon the private gain, but based upon the social gain, right? So we always say that social gain is more important than the private gain in India. So this is also one of the reflection of the democratic socialism. At the same time, when we are saying that we are a socialistic society as per the DPSP of the Constitution of India, when we are saying that preambles also mentions that India is a socialistic country. So what we are saying is that in India we will remove the poverty, we will reduce the inequality, we will check the concentration of wealth in India, we will check the monopolistic tendencies, and accordingly we have made the policies, the programs, and the different initiatives by the government. So that is also a reflection of the democratic socialism. So when you are writing the answer of the poverty, when you are writing the answer of the inequality, when you are writing the answer of the public versus private sector, when you are writing the answer of the nationalism, when you are writing the answer of the terrorism, when you are writing the answer of the extremism, when you are writing the answer of the black money, you should refer to this democratic socialism in India. So in one line you can say that in India we practice the democratic socialism in India, right? So when you mention this line, the examiner will know that you have an in-depth knowledge, and this is how you can score 1 or 2 marks extra in the examination hall, and that is how I am promising that you will score more than 140 marks. The key is that you listen to this lecture very carefully, revise to this lecture very carefully, and make your own notes also in the simultaneous manner, right? So this is going to be a wonderful journey. Now, as I told you, the socialistic society aims at removal of poverty and provision of a national minimum income. That's why we have minimum wages. That's why we are talking about the UBI. That's why we are talking about the pension reforms. That's why we are talking about the different minimum entitlements to the people, right? So this national minimum facilities, national minimum income, we are supposed to provide to every person. Reduction in the inequality of income and wealth, provision of equal opportunities to all, and checking the concentration of economic power and growth of monopolistic tendencies. So this is how we are like practicing the democratic socialism. Now we will also see that how we are practicing the mixed economy, how the mixed economy is in play at different places. So when you know that how the mixed economy is practically evident in the different sectors, then you can write a good answer. You can interlink your answer with the concept of mixed economy, right? So first of all, in India we have the DPSP, and DPSP has clearly mentioned that the purpose of Indian state is to promote the welfare of the people. So first and foremost thing is the promoting welfare of the people. So when you are writing the answer of the poverty, you can start from here. When you are writing the answer of the inequality, you can start from here. When you are writing the answer of the universal basic income, you can write that, you can start from here. When you are writing the answer of the unemployment, you can start from here. And when you are writing the answer of the skill development, housing, all these areas which are very, very important for the General Studies paper 3, you can mention that it is the responsibility of the Indian government, Indian state, to promote the welfare of the people as by virtue of the DPSP. And you can also mention the relevant article, right? Then positive economic role of the state. So state controls the distribution of essential commodities, right? And that's why there is a Essential Commodities Act, which actually controls the pricing. All the important medicines which you buy for it, the basic things, they have a price control. And that's how we are ensuring that public sector or the government has a control over the private sector, so that everyone gets the essential minimum things that we said in the starting itself, that the government will provide the minimum essential commodities. And if the minimum essential commodities are being provided by the private sector, then government will have a control over that, right? Then the government or the state also controls the financial system. The financial system is the backbone of the economy. If the financial system is good, economy is good, because financial system takes care of the savings, investment, which ultimately takes care of the infrastructure, which ultimately takes care of the employment opportunities, the industrial growth. So financial system control is very, very important. That is why we have IRDA in the insurance sector, we have the RBI in the banking sector, and the state endeavors to direct the investment in socially desirable channels, right? In the socially desirable channels, for example, we have the priority sector lending. For example, we have the national pension scheme. For example, we have the sometimes loan waiver also, right? So the state is also controlling the financial system. So this is the positive role of the state. Then State is also promoting the infrastructure facilities like the hydroelectric projects, irrigation projects, road and railway projects. So these projects are being made available to every citizen so that they can live their life smoothly, so that they can do their economic activities, they can earn their livelihood with the help of these basic facilities. So this is the positive role of the state. Then as a mixed economy, we have the coexistence of the public and private sector that I have already told you. So public sector is acting as a senior partner and private sector is acting as a supplement to the public sector, right? Then we have a combination of capitalism and socialism, right? In India, the private sector is based upon the self-interest and the profit motive, but at the same time, it is not free. It is not laissez-faire. Means it is not that they can do whatever they want. They cannot decide the price for each and every product as per their wishes. So we have the controlled private sector. In the starting, we have the license permit quota system. In 1991, we trimmed it down, and today we have the various regulation. We are facilitating the private sector to develop, but at the same time, not at the cost of the society, not at the cost of the poor people. So this private sector we are controlling. So we have a controlled capitalism. The public sector is managed on the basis of the concept of welfare. For example, we have railways. For example, we have the power sector and the irrigation facilities. So all these things are based upon the welfare of the people of the community, right? So till now we have discussed the mixed economy. Till now we have discussed the economic system in India. So we started with there are two kinds of economic system. One is the socialism system, another is the capitalism system. In the socialism system, the good thing is that there is equality. At the same time, there is a problem of inefficiency. In the capitalism system, the good thing is that there is efficiency, but the problem is inequality. So there is exploitation of one class by the another class. In USA, the capitalism system failed in 1932, and in USSR, the social system was not completely success. So we adopted the good of both, and we combined both, and we adopted the mixed economy. And more particularly, we adopted the democratic socialism, where we are ensuring that each and every person gets the equal opportunity. At the same time, there is no exploitation of one class by the another class. So this is how we practice the democratic socialism. And we have given a more important role to the public sector compared to the private sector. We have a controlled private sector. So now we will see now we are coming to the planning system, right? The planning system in India, right? So in India, we have the plan. And first of all, what is the meaning of plan? So as I discussed already, we adopted the planning system from USSR, right? And plan is very simple. You make the study plan, I make the lecture plan, right? The plan is very simple, that how the resources of a nation should be put to use. For example, I have the limitation of time, I have the limitation of money. So how to best utilize my time and money? So that is a plan. You also have the limitation of the time. You have more than 1,000 topics to cover, and that's why you are listening to this lecture, so that you can complete your studies in a planned manner. Similarly, a nation should also have its plan, so that it can utilize its resources, the resources like financial resources, the resources like human resources and other natural resources in a most best possible manner. So in India, we had the planning commission since 2014, and now we have the Niti Aayog. This planning commission was based upon the concept of 5-year plan and the perspective plan. Annual plan, we have annual plan, and this annual plan is still practiced. Even in the Niti Aayog case also, this annual plan is practiced, and this annual plan means nothing but the budget, right? In case of Niti Aayog, we have 3 agendas, 7-year strategy and the 15-year vision document, right? Now the goals of the 5-year plans. Can you recollect what are the goals of the 5-year plan? I'm giving you few seconds. Please recollect, and we will see. Do you exactly know what are the goals of the 5-year plan? And let me give you a very simple hint. There are 4 goals of 5-year plans, 4 major goals. So every 5-year plan have various small goals also, but at the same time, the overall planning system had 4 important goals in India. If you know those 4 goals, you can mention those goals at the appropriate place, and you can write and interlink your answer from that, and you can get extra 1 mark. So I'm giving you 10 seconds to recollect the goals of the 5-year plans. Okay, so the first goal is growth, right? When I say growth basically means increasing the productive capacity of economy, right? So we have agriculture sector, we have industrial sector, we have service sector. So when their growth happens, it leads to the collection of resources. We get a lot of resources. Income of the people is increased. The GDP is the indicator of this growth. The growth in the GDP is the indicator of this growth. This is the fuel. This is the fuel of economy. The growth is very important. Then second thing is modernization. Modernization not only means technological modernization, right? So technological modernization may be in the agriculture sector, new kind of seeds, new kind of irrigation facilities, new kind of fertilizer and the other pesticides. In the industrial sector, new kind of technology. For example, we are talking about the Industrial Revolution 4.0. In the infrastructure, new kind of infrastructure. For example, micro irrigation. For example, the artificial intelligence. For example, the renewable energy. And then also the modernization in the social thought, right? So modernization means modernization in the social thought also. For example, the perspective regarding the females, that female should also participate in the labor. They should also work outside. Right now we are facing the problem of low female labor force participation rate. So that problem is also one of the outcome of the lack of modernization in the social thought. There are various cultural barriers which the women are facing. So this modernization of the 5-year planning system is very important also today also, as far as the social thought goes. If we have the modern thought, then every family, every society can allow the female to work in the outside environment. So this is how we can increase the labor force participation rate. This is how we can give more rights to the women and they can get the land rights. And in the rural area, actually the problem of feminization of agriculture the adverse consequences of the feminization of agriculture can be reduced. The productivity of the agricultural land can be enhanced, right? So modernization of the social thought is what is required. We are already modernizing the industry, agriculture, infrastructure, but we are not modernizing our social thought. Then equity. Equity is very important. All the gains of growth. So growth is very important, because unless we have the growth, we cannot utilize this growth for any other purpose. We can't achieve the goal of modernization and we can't achieve the goal of equity. We don't have resources to what to distribute, right? So first growth, modernization, and then equity. Equity means every person should get the minimum essential facilities in the country. For example, food, health, house, etc. Right? Then last we have self-reliance. Self-reliance was very prominent goal. And this self-reliance, why this self-reliance goal we are talking about? Because India faced a very bad experience during the Britishers' time, that the Britishers came into India as a East India Company. They ruled India for more than 200 years. Now we wanted to become the self-dependent. We don't want to become the dependent on the outside country. Therefore, whatever we can produce, we will not import that. And as we were very weak in the capital goods industry, as I already told you in the the Indian economy during the British time, in this lecture I told you that Indian economy was very weak in the capital goods industry. So we will import the capital goods from outside, but we will avoid importing those goods which we can produce in India. For example, the textile goods. So this self-reliance is very, very important. This is also called as the inward looking strategy. Or this is also called as the import substitution strategy. So whenever you listen about the self-reliance, just keep in mind that it is talking about the inward looking strategy or import substitution strategy, that we will produce whatever we can produce and we will not import whatever we can produce, right? At the same time, there were also restrictions over the exports, right? So this thing will also develop further on, and we will see how this self-reliance was a good thing also and bad thing also. So now we will discuss the first 5-year plan that started from 1951 and was in existence till 1956. So just recall the discussion that we had in the lecture of Indian economy during the British time, where we studied the agriculture sector, industrial, foreign sector, occupational pattern, infrastructure, and the demographic sector. At the time of independence, apart from all those things, it was a time of partition. There was a lot of influx of refugees, so there were quite big instabilities. The food shortages were there and a lot of inflation was there, right? So that was the situation at the time of independence. We had the poor industry, low infrastructure. So in the first 5-year plan that was drafted by the major architect of the first 5-year plan was the Mr. K.N. Raj. And in this plan, we adopted the Harrod-Domar model. So Harrod-Domar model is basically saying that the more output requires more investment, right? So it is saying that more investment is required for getting the more growth. Right? So there is a concept of incremental capital output ratio, which you would have studied for the prelims, right? So this Harrod-Domar model says that more investment is required, and that is why we started investing into the power sector, into the transport sector, into the railways, into the roadways, into the power sector. For example, the dams, multi-purpose dams. Apart from that, we also focused upon the agriculture. Because as we said that India is an agrarian economy, more than 75% people are occupied in the agriculture, more than 85% people are dependent upon the agriculture. And agriculture is also based on the industry as well as the exports. Agriculture is also based upon the industries like textile industry. So agriculture we started focusing upon, and one more reason why we are focusing upon the agriculture, because there was a very severe food shortage. So this was the context why we focused upon the agriculture sector in the first 5-year plan. And the multi-purpose dams we started building. Can you give the example? Rihand Dam, Hirakud Dam, Damodar Valley project, Bhakra Nagal. So all these projects were started building in the first 5-year plan itself. Then we discussed in the previous lecture that land policies of the Britishers very, very, very poor. So in the first 5-year plan, we started the land reforms. We started giving the land to the tillers. land to the tillers. So this starts the beginning of the land reforms. So when you're writing the answer of irrigation infrastructure, when you're writing the answer of power sector, you can start from first 5-year plan. When you're writing the answer of land reforms in India, you can start the answer from Britishers' time and then first 5-year plan and then the later on developments. So this is how you can utilize this lecture in your answer writing. Then the K.N. Raj, who was a major architect of this first 5-year plan. So one of the good things is that he was just 26 in 1950 when this plan was formed. At the age of 26, he gave his model and this model was implemented into the Indian plan. So friends, your age is not the barrier to succeed at any place. Don't think that when I'll become this much of age, I'll be having so much of knowledge. No, the knowledge is not a function of the age. Whatever age you are, you can do wonders at this age also, right? So this is the inspiring story of the Mr. K.N. Raj. Now, K.N. Raj said that in India, the development should happen with the equity. So he said that poverty alleviation should be one of the major goal of Indian planning system. Poverty alleviation. Right? So, at this time only, considering this development with equity, we started the community development plan. So, based upon the ideas of the Mahatma Gandhi, the revival of the rural sector, we started focusing upon the rural areas and we started the community development plan where we started with focusing upon the small areas in the village economy. Then the family planning system also started in the first 5-year plan only, right? So when you're writing the answer of the demography, then you can mention this thing. When you're writing an essay on the population of India, you can mention that in India the family planning started in the 1951 and India was the first country in the world to talk about the family planning. So that is also beauty of this system in India. Now, overall this lecture was, plan was successful. The target was 2.1 and actually 3.6% was the ultimate realization. So all in all, in the starting only, we were successful. We were happy that whatever we are targeting, we are achieving that. Then in the second 5-year plan, so please listen to this very, very carefully because the second 5-year plan is the base of the economy, especially the industrial economy, right? So in the first 5-year plan, we discussed that we focused upon the agriculture sector. Now, we were successful also. Since we thought that in the agriculture, slowly we will develop. Now, let us focus upon the industry. And do you know what is the benefit of the industry over the agriculture? Right? So agriculture has its own importance. Agriculture is important because it is the foundation of the food security. It is the foundation for the input to the industry. It is also important for the exports. But more than agriculture, why we are focusing? Why we should focus upon the industry? Because the industry is much more productive. It takes 1 year to grow a crop in the agriculture sector. However, it can take maximum 1 day to produce an input into an output with the help of industry. So, the speed of activities, the productivity, the growth is much more in the industry. The best example is Western countries. Because Western countries adopted this industrialization, industrial revolution before the Eastern countries, that is why the Western countries become more developed before the Eastern countries, right? So this is why the industry was supposed to be focused. And as we discussed in the previous lecture, that in India we had the poor industrial development. There were regional imbalances. The Indians were prevalent only in few industries. For example, the textile industry in the Bombay. The jute industry in the Bengal was occupied by the Europeans. So in this context, the second 5-year plan focused upon the rapid industrialization, and this idea was given by a very famous economist who is also called the Mahalanobis. Mahalanobis said that we should focus upon the rapid industrialization, because if we have the industrialization, then we can give capital goods to the agriculture also. We can supply the machinery, the threshers and other machineries to the agriculture sector. So this rapid industrialization will help not only provide the employment, not only increase the exports, but also support the other sectors of the economy. So this is how we focused upon the industrialization. And in the industrialization, we focused upon the heavy and basic industries. Why heavy and basic industries? Because at the time of independence, the industries were missing. If we want to grow economy, first we should have very good capital goods industry. We should have an industry who can make cement, the industry who can provide power, the industry which we can provide chemical. So if we have that industry, then we can actually ensure that the other consumer goods industry also get developed automatically. So that is why we gave importance to the heavy and basic industries. And as we know that we were very poor in the heavy and basic industries, therefore we established these industries with the help of foreign loans only. Can you give the example of this? So the example is various power plants of the Steel Authority of India, right? So in the same, there are various power plants. For example, Rourkela, for example, Durgapur, for example, Bhilai. So these three power plants were actually, these three steel plants were actually made by the foreign loans and the foreign technology. So we started building our capital goods industry with the help of foreign loans and the foreign technology, so that once we have the capital industry, then our consumer industry can automatically proceed. So this is how we focused in the second 5-year plan. Now coming back to the discussion that we focused upon the heavy and basic industries. Now going back to that discussion when I said that we gave role to the PSU, because PSU first of all are social oriented, secondly they can afford. So we gave more important role to the PSUs in the industrial policy of 1956. The PSUs were basically given the commanding heights and the private sector was not capable. So private sector was given the complementary or supplementary role. Right? So the private sector was given the supplementary role. So from here you can write why we gave important role to the PSUs in the India. And now when we are talking about disinvestment, the condition is different. Now the private sector is capable, therefore we can go for disinvestment. Now we can regulate the private sector even without licensing system. We have good regulatory system, IRDA. We have good regulatory system like Competition Commission of India. We have good regulatory system like Civil Aviation Regulator and other different regulators. So now we have good regulators, so we can control the private sector without even having the system of licensing. So now we can go for the disinvestment, right? So from here you can compare what is the situation of today and what is the situation at the time of independence, at the time of 1956 especially, right? So from here you can link the topic of disinvestment, you can link the topic of industrial policy, right? Why, how our industrial policy has evolved during the last 70 years. Now next is, in this 5-year plan only, we focused on the import substitution strategy. Do you remember we discussed the goals of the 5-year plan? So the goals of the 5-year plan include self-reliance. Self-reliance is one of the goals. What are the other 3 goals? Another goal is growth, there is modernization, and then there is equity. So this self-reliance goal says that the India should not import those things which can produce with itself. Therefore, it provided various protections to its industries. Protection to the medium, small and micro industries, protection to the big PSUs in the form of reservation of certain sector to the MSME and to the PSUs. So this import substitution strategy we followed. In this time only the atomic and science infrastructure started developing. So when you are writing the answer of science and technology, you can link it with the second 5-year plan. So now I hope you are clear that why we are studying this. So don't think that this is a repetition of the prelims lecture. I am telling you we have to use the things from this lecture, right? Now, very important thing. That is second 5-year plan. The good thing is that it started focusing upon the industrialization. The good thing is that it started building the foundation of the capital goods industry, and we also followed the import substitution strategy, but there are various adverse consequences. When you are focusing upon the capital goods industry, then consumer goods industry gets compromised. Till 1991, the capital goods industry was good, but we didn't have the cars, the mobile phones, the televisions, which were the consumer goods. It's not like we can't manufacture, but we didn't focus upon those industries. So there was a black market for the mobile phones. Ask your parents. They will tell you that they had to wait for years to get a car. They had to wait for years to get a phone. So capital goods industry was good, but consumer goods industry was not good. Similarly, as we focused in the import substitution strategy, we also limited the amount of export that we can do. Therefore, the exports were also very low, which resulted into the 1991 crisis. Then we gave the overprotection to the domestic industries. Because of that overprotection to the domestic industries, the PSUs became sick. They knew that they are monopolistic in the industry. They knew that there is no competition. Therefore, they became sick. And when they became sick, we provided them revival opportunities. And one of the way out was the disinvestment. So in the 1991, we started the disinvestment because there was overprotection and other reasons why the PSUs became sick. Then agriculture sector was ignored. When we say that agriculture sector is poor today, not a new thing. In the first 5-year plan, we focused on the agriculture sector, but in the second 5-year plan, we ignored the agriculture sector. And in mid-1960s, there was a food crisis, right? So there was no consumer goods industry, no exports, overprotection, public sector monopoly was there, which resulted into the sick PSUs. Agriculture sector was ignored, and there was a food crisis. Because of this, we now again had to focus upon the agriculture sector with the help of the green revolution that we will discuss in the later on part. Now, third 5-year plan. So in the third 5-year plan, we considered that India is in the takeoff stage. India is in the takeoff stage. Now that we have basic industries in place, now we can take off and we can be self-reliant and self-generating economy, right? So we focused upon the self-reliance and self-generation, and we gave the top priority to the agriculture because we ignored the agriculture in the second 5-year plan. And we also knew that if we want to promote the industry, then it is the agriculture which can come to rescue. Agriculture provides the basic raw material, right? And this third 5-year plan failed because of the various reasons, unavoidable reasons, like Chinese aggression in 1962, Indo-Pak War in 1965, and the severe drought in the 1965 to 1966. Because of this reason, the third 5-year plan failed miserably. And after that, we came up with the 3 annual plans, right? 3 annual plans. So in these 3 annual plans, after the third 5-year plan, we can see that there was a crisis in the agriculture and there was a serious food shortage, and because of that we came up with the very wonderful, important, significant and the most important revolution in the history of Indian economy, that is Green Revolution. So Green Revolution is a kind of new agricultural strategy. It's a package of modern technology which can be used in the agriculture sector. For example, the high yielding variety seeds, extensive use of fertilizers, exploitation of irrigation potential, and the soil conservation. And the focus is upon productivity. So that productivity increases. When productivity will increase, automatically the production will also increase. When production will increase, we can have the food security. We don't need to be dependent upon the USA for the food imports, right? So here we adopted the Green Revolution. So when you are writing the answer of the agriculture, you can link with the 3 annual plans. This is also called as the plan holiday. right? Then finally we you know, at this time we had the idea of Jai Jawan Jai Kisan. Jai Jawan because there were wars, and Jai Kisan because there was a crisis. So we empowered the farmers as well as the soldiers, and in 2000s this was extended to Jai Jawan Jai Kisan and Jai Vigyan. So this Jai Vigyan was added by the late Prime Minister Shri Atal Bihari Vajpayee, who said that science and technology is very, very important for the development of Indian economy, right? So this Jai Jawan Jai Kisan Jai Vigyan thing you can use in the science and technology answer in the essay, right? So see, this is how you can. Hello friends, so I welcome you to the part 2 of Indian economy since independence. Before we watch this video, I am sure that you must have watched the part 1 of Indian economy since independence, because part 2 you can understand easily only when you have done the part 1 in a very detailed manner. About the session, so in this session we will be discussing every plan starting from the 4th plan till the 12th plan in detail, right? First plan we have already seen that in the first plan we focused upon the higher domain model, power and transport sector, investment, agriculture, and the KN Raj model focused upon the development with equity, where we started the community development plan and it was successful plan. In the second 5-year plan we focused upon the Mahalanobis model, rapid industrialization, heavy and basic industries, and industrial policy in 1956 said that the PSUs will be having the dominant role because private sector was not capable, and the PSUs also need to follow the social objectives. Then we followed the import substitution strategy. Atomic and science infrastructure started coming, and during this plan only the trickle down theory was adopted. Means trickle down theory means so basically before we understand the trickle down theory, there are two things. One thing is growth, from which we accumulate the resources, and second thing is the redistribution of such growth. So if we want to ensure that the human development takes place and the poverty is removed from the India, then first we need to have the resources and then we have to have the distribution, right? So out of these two things, the first step is focusing upon the growth, and redistribution can either take place on its own or the government may have to do it intentionally, right? So we said that we will be focusing upon the growth because we need the resources, and the government will actually not directly intervene into the redistribution. Rather, when big industries will be established in the form of PSUs, when basic and heavy industries will be established in the form of the power sector, cement sector, steel sector, then automatically the jobs will be generated, the income will be generated, and the growth will penetrate itself to the lowest level, right? So this is called the trickle down theory. So in the second 5-year plan, we say that trickle down theory will be adopted, right? Adverse consequences of second 5-year plan we have already seen. Then third 5-year plan, here we say that India is at the takeoff stage, and we focused upon the self-reliance and the self-generating economy. Agriculture was kept the top priority, but this plan failed because of the Chinese aggression, Indo-Pak War, and the severe drought. And the focus shifted from the development to the defense and development, right? Defense and development. Now coming to the 4th 5-year plan. So 4th 5-year plan, first of all, let me tell you what is the background of 4th 5-year plan. So if you see the 4th 5-year plan, it was started in the 1969, and before this there was a India-Pakistan war in 1965, and in that war it was very much clear that USA did not support India. The Western countries were not supporting India, and there were various reasons why that happened. So that is part of the foreign policy. We are not going to discuss why USA did not support the India. So when USA did not support India, and India was dependent upon the USA for its food imports, for its wheat imports. So India realized that it has to ensure this, it has to focus more upon the self-reliance so that it is not dependent upon any of the country, including the USA. Secondly, again, as I told you, in the second 5-year plan, we focused upon the trickle down theory. So here also our focus remained the growth, because we knew that there are a lot of poor people. We can focus upon the direct intervention and redistribution, but we can't do that because we don't have the resources. So our first priority is to accumulate the resources, and that can happen with the help of growth. So this is the reason why we had two pillars. One is the growth with stability, and second is the self-reliance. And here we had the agriculture focus because just before this we started the green revolution. But this green revolution in the initial phase could succeed only in few regions: Punjab, West UP, Haryana, some parts of Telangana, and the other coastal Andhra. Then further, this green revolution could succeed only in some areas, like some crops like wheat, rice. So the arena of the green revolution was limited. And then this poor monsoon actually derailed the achievements of the green revolution. So there were some achievements of the green revolution, but still there was not much growth in the agriculture sector. In this time only, the integrated rural development program started. I am repeating, the integrated rural development program started, and the foundation of rural development started here, right? So if there is a question on rural development and rural infrastructure, so we can start the rural development from the 1952 community development plan. So in the community development plan, the rural development started, and the next phase of the rural development came here, that is the 1969, where the integrated rural development plan started. Then there was a global crisis in the worldwide because of the different reasons, and two factors: one is the poor monsoon, and second is the global oil crisis. Both these factors resulted into the high inflation, right? And this situation was not good for the people. Simultaneously, the banking sector was also being reformed, because till 1969 the banking sector was primarily in the hands of private sector, during the British's time also, and till 1969 also. And the problem with the banking sector was that they were giving loans to the industry, they were giving loan to the people who are already well doing, because they feared that if they give the loan to the poor people, they may not repay back. They were not giving loan to the agriculture sector, they were not giving the loan to the poor people. Therefore, the banks were nationalized. The ownership of the banks was shifted from the public to the private sector, it is vice versa, from the private to the public sector. So this is the bank nationalization. So when you are writing the answer on the financial inclusion, then you should mention this fact: the journey of financial inclusion started in India with the bank nationalization. Again, when there is a question on privatization of banks, you can start from here, that in India the independence journey started with the private banks only, and in 1969, because of the different drawbacks, the banks had to be nationalized, right? So that's why, friends, I am telling you that each and every question you can lay foundation from the planning time, and that is why we are having all this discussion. So you will find in every line you can link with every single question. So this lecture is going to be a foundation for at least 50 topics in the General Studies paper 3, and not only in economy but also in agriculture, also in environment, also in science and technology, internal security, and the disaster management, right? Now, in this plan only we focused upon the employment and the education sector. In this plan only we started focusing upon the PDS and the buffer stock, because see, the green revolution was started just before this plan only, and this green revolution produced good results, and because of these good results we had surplus agricultural output, and this surplus agricultural output, we had surplus agricultural output, and this surplus agricultural output was kept as a buffer stock. At the same time, this buffer stock was utilized for the public distribution system, so that we can ensure that no one in this India can go to the bed with a hungry stomach, right? So this is the reason why the PDS was started. So we have to see the PDS did not start in 1951 because we didn't have the surplus food production. Only after the Green Revolution the PDS started. Therefore, the Green Revolution was the foundation of the PDS. So when you are writing the answer of food security system, when you are writing the answer of PDS, interlink that answer from here. Then Smiling Buddha, the nuclear experiment was also done during the 4th 5-year plan only. And this nuclear experiment actually resulted into levying of multiple sanctions over India. And India became the focus center. Although it was not the military experiment, it was just a peaceful experiment. Still, there was a hue and cry. So when you are writing the answer of nuclear technology in India, you can safely write this point there, right? During the 4th 5-year plan, the nuclear journey of India was achieving one of the very important phase. And then there were a lot of Bangladesh war refugees, and because of that influx, we had a lot of problems. And finally, we could not achieve the goals of this 5-year plan, right? And after this, we started the 5th 5-year plan, right? So 5th 5-year plan started, and you must remember, you may be remembering, you have heard from the different sources that in this time there was the political instability in the country. The condition of emergency was there in the country, and in this emergency time, definitely any policy could not be implemented in a very well-defined manner. So this political instability is one of the reasons why India could not achieve so much growth as if we compare with the China. So when we are comparing the China's growth story with the India's growth story, we can safely write that in India there have been high amount of political instabilities, whether this is the 1970s or this is the 1990s. Because of these emergencies, because of these political instabilities, in India we could not have the consistent policies, we could not take the bold decisions. So this is the one point why how we can compare the growth journey of India and China, right? So during the 5th 5-year plan, during the 5th 5-year plan, the focus was the removal of poverty, that is the Garibi Hatao. So the Indira Gandhi, who was becoming famous at that time because of her authoritarian rule, she started the direct attack on poverty. As I told you that in the Mahalanobis plan, 2nd 5-year plan, we focused upon the trickle down theory. We did not directly intervene into the poverty alleviation. But Indira Gandhi, for the first time in this 5-year plan, focused upon the Garibi Hatao, direct attack on poverty. Right? So when you are writing the answer of poverty alleviation strategy of Government of India, you can start from the first 5-year plan, community development plan. That was one of the strategy to remove the poverty. Then in the third and fourth 5-year plan, we focus most upon the growth. We did not focus upon the poverty alleviation. And here we are focusing on the poverty directly, right? So this was one of the important point of the 5th 5-year plan. In 1975, there was emergency, and after this, the Prime Minister 20-point program was there. This 20-point program focused upon the rural development, urban development, employment, education, and various other social reforms. In this 5-year plan only, the focus was upon the infrastructure also. Like the NHAI, National Highway Authority of India, which is responsible for roads and highways. NTPC, National Thermal Power Corporation, which is responsible for the power generation at the central level. So these kind of organizations were also started during this 5-year plan only. During this 5-year plan only, the AIBP, Accelerated Irrigation Benefits Program, and CADP, Command Area Development Program, these two programs, which are the foundation of the irrigation infrastructure in India, were started. So when you are writing the answer of infrastructure, energy infrastructure, roads infrastructure, irrigation infrastructure, you can write the journey of India started majorly from these organizations, and we focused upon infrastructure directly from this point of time, right? So this is how you can write every line from this lecture into your different answers, and that will make your answer unique answer, different from the other people. This will show your depth of knowledge to the examiner. You will not be writing just the current affairs, you will not be writing just the conventional part, but you will be writing the logistic, the logical and the time bound, time framed manner answer, right? So this is how you will move. Then there was a Janata government. So Janata government was basically reversing all the work that was done by the Indira Gandhi. So Janata government started the rolling plans, and the Janata government focused upon the employment, right? So employment journey started in the 4th 5-year plan, and here also the focus was upon the employment. Now coming to the 6th 5-year plan. So in the 6th 5-year plan, again the Indira Gandhi ji came back, and she started the implementation of all those measures which were started by her in the last 5-year plan. So in this plan, she started focusing upon the anti-poverty measures which she could not implement in the 5th 5-year plan. She also focused upon the employment generation, because employment generation is the foundation of the poverty alleviation, and she focused upon the TRISEM, IRDP, NREP, National Rural Employment Program, Indira Awas Yojana. So there is a housing for all scheme, Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana at present. So the origin of that scheme belongs to 1983 Indira Awas Yojana. So when you are writing the answer of housing for all, you can write one point there that the origin of this housing for all belongs to 1983 Indira Awas Yojana. So that is not the initiative of the present government, but present government has actually highlighted that initiative has been more vigorous. So we have to give the suitable credit to the different government, so that your answer is rational, your answer is balanced, and examiner knows that you have the in-depth knowledge of the economy, right? In this 5-year plan only, we also started focusing upon the technology, right? So the technology like computer technology, computer and IT technology, the technology like nuclear technology, space technology, defense technology. So all kinds of technology were focused in this plan only. We also focused upon the technological education in this 5-year plan only. So different institutions of technology came during this 5-year plan. In this plan, we abandoned the Mahalanobis strategy, and we directly focused upon the infrastructure, which was already started in the earlier 5-year plan. This 5-year plan actually strengthened that focus. Then came the 7th 5-year plan. So in this 5-year plan, the focus was upon the food, work and productivity. So the people required the food because there was a lot of problem of the malnutrition, hunger. The people required the work because there was the problem of the unemployment and the poverty. And we also required the productivity. So for the productivity, we were already focusing upon the technology. So here the focus was food, work and productivity. So in this plan, we started the Jawahar Rozgar Yojana, food for work program. Modern service sector, that is the IT sector, was focused. Outward oriented strategy was also started in this 5-year plan only. So till the last, that is the 6th 5-year plan, we focused upon the input oriented strategy, right? But in this plan we focus upon the outward oriented strategy. So input oriented strategy said that whatever we will, whatever we can produce, we will not import it, and neither we will export from India. But when we saw that the global environment is actually becoming liberal, when the countries like China, they have relaxed their regulations for the globalization, so the country that is the India also started focusing upon the outward oriented strategy. So in this plan, the gradual liberalization actually started. So the liberalization was done completely in 1991, but the foundation of globalization actually started from this fire plan. In this plan only gradual liberalization started, and in this fire plan only the environment focus started from EIA. So when you are writing the answer of EIA, you can write the reference of this fire plan: CPCB, Central Pollution Control Board, EPA 86, and the wetlands. So when there is a question of the pollution, when there is a question of wetland, and you want to write about the government strategy, so you can write that in the 7th fire plan the government started focusing upon the particular area. In this fire plan, the rate of growth was better than the Hindu rate of growth. So Hindu rate of growth is basically between 2 to 3%. Why we call this Hindu growth rate? Because Hindus are said to be very, very patient person who can who have a lot of patience to grow slowly. They don't have much of the desire. So this Hindu rate of growth is called up to 3%. But in this fire plan, the rate of growth was around 6%. In 1991, the liberalization, privatization and globalization started. Why this started? Because there was huge crisis happening at this time. So this particular topic, the 1991 LPG reforms, we will discuss separately. It will take another half an hour to discuss this topic in complete manner, because there can be a separate question on this topic. This liberalization, privatization, globalization, we will discuss what are the reasons why these reforms were required, what are the actual components of these reforms, then what are the consequences, the positive consequences and the negative consequences of these reforms. So we will discuss everything in detail. These are also called the first generation reforms, right? Now coming to the 8th fire plan. So the 8th fire plan, this was basically built upon the foundation of LPG reforms, and in the LPG reforms we focused upon the privatization. The planning shifted from imperative planning to the indicative planning, right? So there was a structural reforms. When we say structural reforms, it means basically the liberalization, privatization and the globalization. And there was indicative planning compared to the imperative planning. So in the imperative planning, everything is decided by the government. The government provides licenses, quota, right? But in the indicative planning, the government sets the broad parameters of growth and development, and accordingly the private sector can expand. There are not much restrictions. So this indicative planning started in the 1992. So when you are writing the answer of industrialization, when you are writing the answer of ease of doing business, you can mention these things over there. So that will enrich your answer and make the answer different from the other people. In this fire plan, the GDP growth rate was very, very good. The industrial growth rate was also good. Why they were good? Because of the liberalization, privatization and globalization only. In 1996, the average growth rate was 8 to 9% versus the 1% of the 1991. So we can see that this time was very, very good. The fiscal deficit was very, very lower. And why fiscal deficit was lower? Because a lot of taxes were coming, and taxes are basically the revenue receipt. And when there is revenue receipt from the taxes, definitely overall receipt go up, the deficit goes down and the fiscal deficit will also come down. These taxes were coming from the good industrial growth as a result of the liberalization, privatization and globalization. From here we can see that why good industrial development is required, because when there is a good industrial development, it results into the good amount of taxes. When there are good amount of taxes, it results into the good fiscal health, and when there is good fiscal health, then it has a positive consequence, because the government don't need to borrow. The burden on the exchequer is reduced, and the problem of the three problem are there because of the fiscal deficit. First is the inflation, second is the crowding out of private sector, and third problem is the burden on the future generation. So all these problems, the inflation, crowding out of the private investment and burden on the future generation, all these three problems are eliminated because of the good industrial growth. So if there is a question why we require good industrial growth, you can safely mention because it provides good taxes also. This is one of the point you can mention, and you can give the example that during the 8th 5-year plan we achieved good industrial growth, which resulted into good taxes and the lower fiscal deficit. So you can give the evidence from this point. In this time, because our economy was open, and in the 7th 5-year plan we focused upon the outward oriented strategy. That is why the exports increased and the current account deficit decreased. Inflation also became lower because of the low fiscal deficit. I already told you that there are three positive benefits of the low fiscal deficit. But the problem was jobless growth. Why this problem? Because after the LPG, one of the very important drawback of the LPG or the liberalization, privatization, globalization is that the service sector was disproportionately growing as compared to the industrial sector and the agriculture sector. As a result, the absorption of the manpower into the economy was less, because service sector job potential is comparatively low versus the industrial sector. So because of this service sector growth and missing of industrial sector, we could not achieve the good good jobs in the economy. Then came the 9th 5-year plan. So during this 9th 5-year plan only, the Southeast Asian crisis started, and India was interlinked with the Southeast Asia, because Southeast Asia is one of the very important market from the exports perspective, as well as a lot of people from the South Asia invested into India. So one thing is that we were getting the export revenue, and second thing is we were getting the FDI and FII from the Southeast Asia. So because of this crisis, the export also came down and the foreign investment also came down. So we can see that Southeast Asia crisis resulted into the exports down and the FDI down. Then service sector. So the service sector was improving, and industrial share was comparatively low. As I told you that even though the industry was growing, but still the share of industry was not that much good. So the service sector was growing and its share was also improving. Its share became more than 50%. Although this share was in terms of the GDP only, not in terms of the jobs. The fifth pay commission were also there, and this fifth pay commission gave a lot of stimulus to the government employees. It increased the salaries of the government employees, which resulted into the high amount of fiscal deficit. In the center, there was high amount of political instability, and there was coalition government. So this coalition government could not make important decision. Then in this 5-year plan only, we started the second generation reforms. So do you remember the first generation reforms? First generation reforms were started in the 1991 in the form of liberalization, privatization and globalization reforms. And after this, the second generation reforms were started. So what are the components of second generation reforms? The first component was the state level fiscal reforms. So till that time we were focusing upon the central level fiscal reforms, reducing the expenditure and increasing the revenue of the central level. But in this plan, we started focusing upon the state level fiscal reforms also, so that the state's fiscal deficit is reduced and the burden is also reduced. In this plan only, we started focusing upon the flexibility in labor laws. And in this plan, for the first time, we adopted the development paradigm versus the growth paradigm, right? So, as I told you, in the third 5-year plan, we were focusing upon, in the fourth 5-year plan, we were focusing upon the growth with stability. But here, we shifted the focus from the growth to the development. So, what is the difference between the growth and development? So, growth is basically having only single dimensional focus, that is the improvement in the GDP. However, development is having multi-dimensional aspect. So, it includes the growth as well as the redistribution of growth and the conversion of growth into the human development indicators. For example, better education, more employment, the housing, food and other basic facilities to the people. So, this development paradigm, this focus upon the basic minimum needs. And this development paradigm was also started because during this time only, these Millennium Development Goals were actually laid down in the world. So, inspired from the Millennium Development Goals, we started focusing upon the development paradigm versus the growth paradigm, right? So, before this time, the growth was considered to be equal to development, which was not a proper way to define the development, but that was done. So, in this time, we started focusing upon the basic minimum needs, and the basic minimum needs basically means the needs like food, housing, road, electricity, water, education and jobs. So, these kind of minimum needs were focused in this plan. We also started focusing upon the decentralized planning versus the centralized planning, and we also gave importance to the self-help groups. Rainbow Revolution in the agriculture sector was also started, and the Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana, which was the flagship program of the late Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee, was also started in this plan. In the 10th 5-year plan, we started focusing upon the monitorable targets, that we had predefined target for various indicators like fiscal deficit and many other things. In this plan only, the FRBM, Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act 2003 came into picture. This FRBM Act laid down the monitorable target for fiscal deficits at the central and the state level. That fiscal deficit should not increase more than 3% at the central level. The revenue deficit should not increase more than 0% in the central level. So, that is how the monitorable target started. And also, in this plan, India was shining. The Atal Bihari Vajpayee, when he was fighting the 2004 election, he gave the slogan of Shining India, because India was getting huge fiscal huge FDI, huge FPI, NRI deposit. The people were very much hopeful that India is growing like anything. India is going to become the next China within 10 years. Why that? Because we were seeing the fruits of first and second generation reforms, and the strong fiscal financial sector was there. Because of the slowdown in the Southeast Asia, slowdown in the Southeast Asian countries, the people, the European and the Western people, they started investing into the Thailand and the Hong Kong. In the USA, the stock market slowdown was there because of the dot-com bubble, because of the dot-com bubble burst, which happened in 2000. And the European countries were also not doing good. Because of these reasons, the India was achieving the good targets of the FDI and FPI. So when you are writing the answer of FDI, you can also mention all these facts. And because of the high FDI inflows, and there was a fear of currency appreciation, right? And because of this fear of currency appreciation, India had to devalue the currency so that the exports growth can be taken place, so that exports remain incentivized. And in this time only, because of the good amount of FDI, the cheaper funding was available, and because of this cheaper funding, the better industrial and service sector growth can take place. In this 5-year plan only, the growth is said to be service-led growth. The service growth rate was more than 10% and the service sector growth was 60%. So this is one of the drawback of the LPG reforms, that we had the service-led growth. Now what is the problem with the service-led growth? The problem is joblessness. The GDP was growing at 7.8% and the service sector was growing at 7.8%. The good thing is that we were having low fiscal deficit at 3.5%, low current account deficit at just 1% of GDP. The savings rate also crossed the benchmark of 32% and the investment rate crossed the benchmark of 30% to achieve the 34%. This saving rate and investment rate, they had the level of around 30% in the 2007, and right now also their level is almost same. If we see the economic survey of 2018, the economic survey of 2018 had a separate chapter on the savings rate and the investment rate decline, and it analyzed whether this 30% rate should increase, should decrease, or it will remain stable. And it concluded, after analyzing so many things, that the saving rate and investment rate will remain almost stable, right? So this topic, the savings rate and the investment rate, their trends, the different factors, and what are the different things, we will discuss in a separate lecture. So there will be a separate half-an-hour lecture on the savings rate and the investment rate and their factors and some suggestions how to improve the savings and the investment rate, because in 2017 there was a question in the macroeconomy that whether savings rate is one of the major factor for recent slowdown in the Indian economy. In this 5-year plan only, we focused upon the good governance. Good governance is the one of the parameter given by the World Bank. So the good governance started from here, and in this time only the India Vision 2020 was given by our late Honorable Prime Minister Shri APJ Abdul Kalam. So when you are writing an essay, you can mention this point. When you are writing the answer in GS2 or essay, you can mention these points. Outcome and the general budgeting also started in the 9th 5-year plan only. However, there were many drawbacks from this plan. The drawbacks were that agriculture sector was ignored. It was focused upon the service sector, industry, but agriculture sector was ignored. The human development indicators like IMR, MMR, and the literacy rates were not doing good. 11th 5-year plan came in 2002, and this 11th 5-year plan was, this 11th 5-year plan, just a minute, it came in 2007. So this 11th 5-year plan was, in this 11th 5-year plan, the global crisis was going on, USA subprime crisis was going on. The USA subprime crisis happened because of the burst of the housing bubble, right? And it had the bad impact on the Indian economy because our exports came down, our FDI came down, and our Shining India, the slogan with that we were giving in 2000 in the 10th 5-year plan, that actually also was no longer valid, right? In this plan, there was high amount of inflation. Why a high amount of inflation? Because of the different reasons, like in this plan, 7th pay commission came. This pay commission is responsible for giving the more amount of wages to the government, and the informal sector demanded more wages, and because of this more wages by the informal sector and the government sector, the cost of production increased, because when there is an increase in the wages, the cost of production automatically increases. So this is the first factor how the inflation was there. Secondly, the monsoon also became very, very poor. Because of this poor monsoon, the supply side constant was there in the agriculture sector, right? And thirdly, the high amount of crude oil prices. So there was the high amount of crude oil prices, and because of 3 reasons, the pay commission, the monsoon failure, as well as the increasing oil prices, the condition of stagflation was there. The condition of stagflation was there, that there is a huge inflation, right? In this plan only, the Rashtriya Swasthya Bima Yojana and National Food Security Mission were introduced. Agricultural modernization was also happening in this time. and the important policy, that is the Rashtriya Krishi Vikas Yojana, which said that agriculture sector should grow at the rate of 4% for every year. This policy also started during this plan only. Rights based approach, that is giving rights to the people for work through the MG Narega, also started in this plan only. Then 12 fire plan came. So this is from 2012 onwards. So this 12 fire plan came, and the slogan of this 12 fire plan was the faster, sustainable and more inclusive growth. In the 11th fire plan, I missed one thing, that is it focused upon the inclusive growth. So when you are writing the answer of inclusive growth, you can mention that this inclusive growth was started in the 11th fire plan only, and the examples of this inclusive growth are Rashtriya Swasthya Bima Yojana, National Food Security Mission, and the rights based approach, right? Now 12th fire plan, faster, sustainable and more inclusive growth. So here they are focusing upon the fast growth, so that the more resources are there, sustainable because it should be environment friendly also, and more inclusive growth. It focused upon the rights based approach, participation of people, so that the people make the plans, they are involved in the implementation, the things like social audit, citizen charter, these things were focused in this plan. Social inclusion was also focused, e-governance, so that people have the government services at their device, and sustainable and the environment friendly development could take place. Sorry. Schemes were conversed and youth focus was there, and there were many reforms in the environment, that is the NGT, National Green Tribunal, National Tiger Conservation Authority, Kampa, National Ganga River Basin Authority, and the Bharat norms were introduced. Renewable energy was also started focusing upon this time only, and National Action Plan on the Climate Change, this was also introduced in this fire plan only. This is the foundation of the environmental governance in India. So you can also mention the 12th fire plan is the foundation of the environmental governance, where we focused upon the NAPCCC. So thank you very much. I hope you have learned many things from this lecture. I will have one recommendation. Don't stop in this lecture. Revise this lecture at least 2 times more. For example, this is USA. And in USA, there are small investors who are excited to invest into India's stock market, because India is doing good. India में कोरोना का इफेक्ट कम रहा है. India has been quite comparatively successful in dealing with the corona. India's stock market is doing good as compared to USA. So small investors want to invest into the India's stock market, but they are taking the help of a institution which is called foreign institutional investor. So it can be a bank or it can be some other agency, right? So this institution, this is collecting the funds from lot many people, and it goes to the India's stock market. It registers itself with the regulator of the India's stock market, that is the SEBI, and it invests into the India's stock market, right? So this is for this transaction, this FII it issues some instrument to these investors. So this is called participatory notes, right? So they are the financial instrument which are issued by the FII who has invested on behalf of some foreign investors into the India's stock market. Now there is a problem with this. The problem is that these small investors, they have invested into this institution, and India's regulator, although it knows about FII, but it does not know about these people. So these small investors, there is no KYC formality with the SEBI. SEBI do not know who is the ultimate investor into this FII, right? Because of this, in many cases, money laundering started happening. That means the people started investing the black money into this FII, and this FII started investing into the stock market. So our stock market got lot of money laundered kind of money. They got lot of black money, and many a time that black money was routed from India only. So India's people, they were investing into some foreign FII, and they were passing that money back to India. So this became a big root of the money laundering, and this was the one problem. Another problem was that this is a FII, this is not FDI. That means they are not stable investor. They are interested into getting the short-term gain. So the moment they feel that India's market is going to be there is some problem in India's stock market, they will withdraw the fund immediately, and the India's stock market will become unstable. So there are two problems. One is problem of money laundering, because the India's stock market regulator SEBI do not know who is the ultimate investor. Secondly, it creates lot of volatility into the stock market. So because of this, lot of restrictions have been put on the participatory note investment, right? In fact, in the external chapter, I discussed that Tarapur committee recommended certain points regarding full capital account convertibility, right? So that India should get into the full capital account convertibility only after all the participatory notes are banned. The participatory notes should not be allowed, because they can lead to money laundering and they can lead to high fluctuation in the India's stock market, right? So a lot of restrictions, SEBI regulations, other restrictions have been put. Now the government tries to allow participatory note only when they have the KYC of the people who are investing, which is not a easy task. So this is about the participatory notes. Now let us see. So P notes are issued by the registered FPI, right? So earlier we called them FII. Now we call them FPI, right? So after the Arvind Mayuram committee recommendations, we call them FPI, not FII, right? P notes are issued by registered FPIs to overseas players who wish to invest in the India's capital market. This is very crucial, without registering themselves directly, right? So in our example, these small investors, they are not interested in registering themselves into the India's stock market, right? Though they are used on Indian shares, they are located outside of India, right? P notes has an anonymous nature. This is the problem. P notes has an anonymous nature, as these investors could be beyond the reach of Indian regulators. And there are some recent restrictions from the SEBI, KYC norms, anti-money laundering norms. It has barred resident Indians, NRIs, and entities owned by them from making investment through the P note, right? So why they have barred the people of India? So that the people of India do not route back the money from India to the foreign country and then back to the India's stock market. So to control the money laundering, they have stopped the participatory notes investment from the resident Indians, NRIs, and the entities owned by them, right? So this is about the participatory note. If you have any doubt, you can ask me.
सर मतलब इसका क्रक्स यही है कि जो फॉरेनर है वो इस इंडिया में इन्वेस्ट कर सकते हैं, बट जो रेजिडेंट इंडियन है वो उसमें इन्वेस्ट नहीं कर सकते।
हाँ नहीं, क्रक्स ये नहीं है, क्रक्स ये भी है जो आप कह रहे हैं, लेकिन जो फॉरेनर से भी है ना, उनको भी केवाईसी नॉर्म फुलफिल करना होगा अभी, है ना। केवाईसी नॉर्म सबके लिए है। इंडिया वालों को तो बैन ही कर दिया, फॉरेन वालों को भी हमने केवाईसी के लिए बोला है, और फॉरेन वालों को भी हमने बोला है कि एंटी मनी लॉन्ड्रिंग गाइडलाइन को फॉलो करना होगा।